you talk about near death experiences and stuff like that, and so I know you study it, you hear people's stories and stuff. As far as you, have you had that type of encounter with a near death experience?
I've never had an NDE. No, no. I've had like the mystical sort of unharmed, non-traumatic stuff.
Well, that's the
Um,
next question. Are if since you've never had it, are we facilitating them coming near death on 5 grams or more of psilocybin or something like that? You know, it feels very similar to what they're talking about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot. A lot of people have said ketamine is, in particular, like a really close. Well, I don't know, a way to have a near-death experience, basically. So yeah, I think there's some really interesting things that you could do under appropriate conditions and circumstances. And I definitely I've done high doses of mushrooms, and it's not. If you're listening to this out there, it's not a toy. Like, do not go into that lightly,
Yeah.
and preferably go into it with someone who's experienced and who is not taking the mushrooms while you are, and do your homework so you know like what to expect if it's not so fun. Because like, yeah, going in again, it's like psychic amplifiers, psychological amplifiers. It's like taking a humongous magnifying glass to your own psyche and being able to look back at it, and everything's turned up. The volume's turned up to 11 on everything, and it's like if you're not having a great day or you're not in a great point in your life, then that experience you can be dropped into that, and it's like you're just stuck there until it's over. So it's not always the best thing ever, but if you do have a great experience, it's like beautiful, transcendent. Words can't even describe. I mean, the last session I had was so abstract. There was nothing that even vaguely resembled form of any sort whatsoever. It was hyper abstract, but it was absolutely phenomenal. So, in the integrated period, in the aftermath, you can learn a lot about yourself if you take the time to think about it and reflect on it. They are definitely tools. I don't have structure around it, using that stuff as such. I like microdosing, by the way. I
Yeah.
think microdosing is a really cool thing. So,
Oh yeah.
very small doses on a consistent basis. There's another habit for you guys. If you want habits and routine, that's an awesome one. Microdoses.
Yeah. I feel like so with that, I mean, a lot of stuff we've been talking about, and you mentioned consciousness a lot, and just going in. Do you think that tools like psilocybin and those kind of things are just allowing you to explore your own consciousness in like a deeper way? Is all of that like within you and within the universe, like those kind of that concept that it's like it's not literally like the mushrooms like giving you access or a pass to these deeper states of consciousness that exist within you and without you at the same time, or is it all within? Like, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it's sort of semantics as well, because you, without is within. If you understand the psyche is the only reality, and I mean that in the broadest sense. I don't mean the thing, your brain and your skull. I mean the nature of all reality infinitely is consciousness. So that's the container. There is no container in a sense. It's like everything is theoretically possible. Everything manifests somewhere in some place somehow. And all that afterlife, the afterlife stuff we've been talking about, I just want to be clear that to anyone listening, I'm not at all negating the fact that consciousness survives the death of the physical body. It's just that when you talk about in and out, it's like those terms don't really have any meaning at a certain threshold. It's kind of all the same. Ultimately, everything's contained in this transpersonal psyche. So you talked about having experiences on mushrooms, and you can have contact with the spirits of deceased family members. I mean that happens. That happened to my brother not long ago. He saw or communicated, at least saw, our grandfather, who we never actually had a chance to meet. He died when I was 11, and my brother was 3 years yet to be born. So he actually had that contact with him in his ayahuasca session. So yeah, there's a lot that you can do with altered states of consciousness. We're not trapped in our own personal little solipsistic bubbles. We are part of this integrated transpersonal field where I can connect with you telepathically. I can venture into the afterlife and meet my grandpa. Like all this stuff is available to us if we want to do it, for sure.
Now, with that again, exploring the psyche, do you think that really was your grandfather, or or was it just the essence or the the hope of wanting to someday meet him, that it's planted somewhere in the psyche, or does it, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's still the same experience for the individual. You leave there with closure. You leave there with a hope of, that we continue. I mean, there's so much that's imparted to you in your psyche that there is an afterlife. Even if there isn't, you being okay with death now, because I know where we go when we die, and we're okay. There's so much that's imparted to you. But as far as it being really Grandpa, obviously, do you think it matters, or was it really him? What would you say to that?
I think the person having the experience has to be the one to answer, probably. We can only assess things based on in the information and the evidence. So case by case is how I like to approach things, because it's like, it could well have been grandfather. Like, that's entirely possible. It's a field of information and consciousness that gets interpreted by your sensory system in the form of a physical appearance, a humanoid looking being. And, that's just the way that it makes sense for that intelligence to present itself to our consciousness while we're still anchored in a human body. We're still tuned to the human body system, and that's what makes sense to us. So I think there's an intelligent interaction there if it is a real contact. And, there's a lot of afterlife research experiments with mediums and all sorts of things that indicates really strongly that we are capable of interacting with dead people. And it's a completely natural fact of life. So yeah, absolutely, it could well have been that. And like I say, the survival of consciousness thing is very, very evidentially based. There's no reason to look at that as an article of religious faith or something that we've just plucked out of the air to make ourselves feel better. The evidence for it is there, and it's very strong.